Welcome to the July 11th regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission.
State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting include representatives of the city's planning department, city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates.
If you wish to address the Planning Commission this evening, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission and not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt the meeting, please either switch it to the silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary Kathy Zarnicki to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Buechner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Fox?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Chagel?
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now move on to approval of the agenda. Would someone like to move to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting? Mr. Krent makes a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Buechner seconds it. Any discussion on the agenda? If not, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Chagel?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next are approval of the minutes from the June 27th meeting. One note, it's not explicitly noted in the minutes, but I think we can orally put it in the record that after the last meeting, the Assistant City Attorney Dufresne made some minor edits to the bylaws that were approved so that it states by majority vote of members present at the meeting, the Planning Commission may temporarily waive these rules under appropriate circumstances to permit a speaker additional time, and that was the edited Article 7, Section 5.d. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented and with that correction noted? Mr. Fox makes a motion and Ms. Malala-Holly seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Chagel?
Yes.
Mr. Buechner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is number 4 on the agenda, public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the Planning Commission for an item that is not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, then we will go on to number 5 on the agenda, which is a preliminary site plan review, file number SC JPLN 2023-007, proposed estates of Eckford site condominium, 22 units or lots, south side of Eckford, west of Rochester, parcels 88-20-15-252-028 and 002 and 036 and 037 and 004 and 005. Section 15, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district. And I assume Mr. Carlisle has the honors of presenting.
Yes, thank you. It's a great honor to be presenting to you tonight. Tonight before you is a proposed site condominium, the Estates of Eckford. The site is located at the southeast corner of Tallman and Eckford. The site is currently 6 parcels, totaling approximately 7.6 acres in area. We note that the site is encumbered both with wetlands and tree cover. We also note that the site is directly across the street on Eckford from the recently approved Eckford Oaks cluster development. Site is surrounded by R1C, single-family lots. There is a vacant Troy School parcel that's located just to the west, and to the north, as I noted, is the cluster development that was recently approved. Planning Commission should be familiar with the site. It was before you in February. That was done under a proposed cluster development where they actually preserved the open space and kind of grouped the houses closer together. That plan in front of you, the previous plan in front of you was a total of 26 units, included 9 units that fronted on Eckford. The smallest lot was 6,300 square feet, and the average lot size was a little bit over 7,000 square feet. With that application, the applicant proposed a ranch, a story and a half, and a colonial, which ranged from about 1,900 square feet up to 2,900 square feet. It was reviewed by the Planning Commission again in February, and a vote of 7-1, it was recommended to the City Council for approval. However, in a meeting in April, the City Council voted to deny the plan on a vote of 7-0. So based on that denial, the applicant resubmitted the application as what we call a by right site condominium project. I want to be very clear, a site condominium is, it looks and feels like a traditional normal subdivision with single family homes. It's just a way we classify property. The proposed development includes 22 units. And we do note that the wetland along the eastern boundary is being preserved as part of the application. The smallest lot is 9,600 square feet, and the average lot size is 10,600 square feet. The site does meet all the required R1C calculations, and the applicant is proposing multiple two-story options that range from 3,200 square feet up to 3,600 square feet. With regards to access and circulation, there are 8 lots that are now accessed off Eckford. Again, the previous plan that was shown before you had 9 lots, and then 14 lots are accessed off a new, I think it said private road, it's actually a new public road off of Tallman. In addition, the applicant is agreed to add a 10-foot wide bike path, that sidewalk along Tallman Drive and Eckford Drive. This would connect that path that runs here from the Daisy Knight Dog Park all the way up to the DMC site, or DPW site just to the north. As noted, there are wetlands on the site. The applicant is preserving approximately 1.3 acres of the site as wetlands. Eagle has agreed with the applicant's delineation, and they are under review with Eagle with regards to a wetland permit. If the preliminary site plan is approved by the Planning Commission, we would note that the condition of approval would be obtaining that Eagle wetland permit, and that should be done prior to any approval of the final site plan. The applicant has provided the required landscaping along all public roads, including the interior road. In addition, based on tree loss, they are required to plant 302 inches of required tree mitigation, and they have provided those 302 trees, primarily along the rear property lines and the rear lot lines you can see of both the houses that front on Eckford as well as along the southern property lines where they put most of those 302 inches of trees. Again, the applicant has provided 6 different elevation types. These are 4 examples. Brick material is the primary material for the units. There are standards under which the Planning Commission should consider. The first are, it's not special use standards, I apologize for that. It's site plan standards, includes public street access, sidewalks, public sewer and water, density, existing condition plan, and floor plans and elevation. We find they meet those standards. In addition, there are additional site plan review standards that the Planning Commission is familiar with. So lastly, in summary, Planning Commission is to consider if the site plan standards and the site condominium standards have been met. And if so, the Planning Commission approves the preliminary site plan. We recommend that the applicant obtain an Eagle wetland permit. The applicant flip the driveway location of lot 6 to not conflict with the proposed pedestrian crossing of Eckford. And lastly, the applicant provide side and rear elevations materials for all the elevations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Carlisle, we received some correspondence from Mr. Schaff regarding wetlands and a reference to 180-year-old silver maple.
Yeah.
Can you show me where that silver maple is?
The silver maple is generally located in this general area. It's within the wetland area. That's going to be presumably protected if the Eagle permit is granted. So that tree should survive and be protected as part of this development moving forward.
Yes, Ms.
Thank you.
Parak. Oh, is that it, Mr. Hudson? Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, could we talk about the flipping of the driveway? I feel like in the proposed resolution, we talked about flipping 5, and then now we're talking about 6, but I'm not sure which one needs to be flipped.
So if you look up here, the concern is the proximity of 6 to this proposed crossing here. So the applicants agreed to flip 6 over to this location to allow for more separation between the driveway locations and the actual crossing. Does the resolution say 5?
Yeah, it does. That's fine. And then when I had originally read it, I thought that maybe we were talking about the drive opposite for, I guess, Eckford Oaks, that drive coming out. It has nothing to do with that.
No, it's the drive for this particular development. It's this driveway location at 6 needs to be, like, again,
Okay.
moved over, just allow more separation between the drive and the actual bike path.
Sure, thank you.
Ms. Malala.
Based on Mr. Hudson's question, I just want a clarification again about the location of that 270-year-old oak tree. To my understanding, in one of the printouts that I saw on my table, it said it's located right behind Lot 22. Am I misunderstood?
Yeah, it's not, Lot 22 is this lot located here. It's basically south of the cul-de-sac, and so it's in this general location right here.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fox.
On the topic of the cul-de-sac, there was a reference in the public comment email that we received to an Eagle recommendation to flip the direction of the cul-de-sac. Are you guys aware of Eagle having any particular opinions? Okay.
No, I mean, the only reason Eagle would get concerned with the dimension, size, and location of a cul-de-sac is how it impacts wetlands, and so I would assume that would be something under the review, but we haven't heard that's a concern from Eagle.
I think Mr. Faison, and then we'll go to Mr. Beekner.
I know in the planning commission meeting, when we talked about this in the city council meeting, there was a lot of discussion around the number of driveways facing Eckford, and now we've gone from 9 to 8. But my question is that in any violation of any ordinance? That's right, you said they meet all the standards in this.
They meet all the standards. The lots meet the required lot width, and so they meet all those requirements. So, again, this meets all the zoning standards, and so we consider it by right development. It's been reviewed by the DPW department. They didn't raise any concerns with the number of driveways on Eckford, and it was not raised as a traffic concern as well by any department. So, there's no issues that we can see with the number of driveways on Eckford.
Thank you.
Mr. Beekner.
Couple of questions. Green space percentage?
I believe the applicant has noted it's 17%, but again, there's no requirement for any required green space because this is a R1C site condominium project.
And I just want to hear the drainage-wise, is this going to be an improvement for the neighbors in all directions?
It should be, because right now it's improved with, I believe it's 4 single-family homes on these 6 parcels, and so there's no stormwater management control to date or on the site now, and so by developing the site, there'll actually now be stormwater management controls on the site that would actually should improve the existing situation on the site. It will go through a full engineering review.
Thank you.
Ms. Malala.
Thank you, Chairman. Ben, just kind of walk me through this. I was under the impression that usually not much of construction is allowed in the wetlands area. And here we do see a sizable chunk of the cul-de-sac that is going to be occupying part of the wetlands. Was that my understanding, that usually we don't build much on the wetlands?
In our packet, there's actually a wetland,
Yeah.
so
I saw that.
if you actually look at where the wetland delineation is located, the cul-de-sac actually is actually in a spot where it's less impactful on the wetland than if it was flipped. Sure.
It is page 27 in our packet. How I am seeing the cul-de-sac, if I were to superimpose the cul-de-sac on the wetlands area,
So,
there is a lot more, I
So the-
feel.
you know, superimpose it, it's in this general area where the cul-de-sac is located. Yeah, yes, but, so we can, and the applicant can confirm that, but it's in this general location. You know, we don't have a local wetland ordinance, so the city does not control and mitigate wetland impacts in the city. It's under wetland impacts are under the state under an Eagle permit. So they are required to go through an Eagle permit. Eagle is going to hold a public hearing on this matter, and if it's approved, they can impact the wetlands based on what Eagle approves as part of the permit. So they're going through the permitting process. Eagle does allow wetland impact if it's approved through the permit, and they would have to mitigate either in somewhere on this site or mitigate off-site based on what Eagle would permit as part of that process.
Okay, considering what is ahead of the, for this applicant, when these proposals come through, do we in some form or shape or manner tell the developers that they are better off just doing any kind of development, leaving the wetlands alone, so that we and they, of course, will not have to worry about getting these permits? Because as I see it, I don't know whether it's a huge challenge for them to get the permit, but I'm assuming if it is designated as a wetland, and I also read it was in 2002 that this designation was given for this area, if I'm correct.
I can address the 2002. So we have a GIS system, Geographic Information Systems. It's a program an information program that organizes information, all different types of information, like property lines and zoning and wetlands. And the city used in the early 2000s, created a wetlands layer on their GIS system to generally indicate where wetlands were at the time. Now, that was over 20 years ago that layer was created. And as we all know, wetlands change over time. They can become larger, they can become smaller, they can remain the same. You know, it depends on what's been happening. A lot of different factors can contribute to that. So I would say that a significant percentage of single-family developments in the city contain some form of wetlands. The state law that regulates wetlands defines what a state-regulated wetland is and a non-regulated wetland. And a state-regulated wetland under the state law is any wetland that's at least 5 acres in area and or is contiguous to a lake, river, or stream. So if you meet any of that criteria, it's considered a state-regulated wetland. And this Eagle gets involved, and they're the organization that reviews and approves whatever happens. Now, if Eagle decides that they can fill a portion of the wetland, they've got to mitigate what they fill. So they've got to either create other wetlands on site, or they can create in other areas, or they can buy wetlands credits through the state. For non-regulated wetlands, in order for a municipality to regulate those, they have to create a wetlands ordinance. We don't have a wetlands ordinance. So for those non-regulated wetlands, they can simply be filled in. So I think for any non-regulated wetland that we have in the city, when we have a development application, almost without exception, they're filled in because they can be. There's no other regulations. So as we all know, we're not built out yet. There's still some parcels left, but we're approaching being built out. And all the quote unquote easy parcels have been built on. So the ones that are remaining that are vacant or underdeveloped in 2023, there's a good reason. Sometimes it's wetlands, sometimes it's floodplains, sometimes, there's different reasons, but we can expect moving forward that the vacant lots are going to have some type of challenges. In this instance, it's a wetlands that's on the site that's maybe kind of held up this from being developed over the last many years. But the process is they have to go through the Eagle process, and I'll note for those residents in the area, I received an email late this afternoon. Eagle contacted the city engineer to let them know that this is in the review process, and this is the public notification period where the public can actually comment on this application. So those in the audience or watching at home, you can go to the Eagle website. You can leave comments on this, and I believe they're going to have a public hearing. You're going to want to clarify that. But if you have problems finding the link, just email me or call me, and I'll email you the link to that so you can comment. So if the authorization for regulating the wetlands does not fall on this commission or the city, it's a state of Michigan matter. And if this were to go forward, they'd have to get Eagle approval to do what they're proposing. And if Eagle were to not approve what they want to do and it changes this layout, they'd have to come back to the Planning Commission for review and approval all over again.
Just to add, I do want to note, there is a letter in here in the packet from 2022 that does state that Eagle agrees that these are the boundaries of where the wetlands are on site, and this is what they're getting a permit for, is to impact those wetlands on site.
Okay, thank you. And do we also have, what's the acreage of the wetlands as opposed to the proposed development site, the percentage?
It's on the map. The numbers are there.
I can give it to you. So let me add it up. I can give it to you in a second here.
0.1201. Okay, I got the answer.
Well, Mr. Carlisle is looking at that. Mr. Fox, you had a question?
Just for the sake of comparison, what percentage of the wetlands would have been preserved under the denied cluster development versus this new plan that's been proposed? Is more of the wetland being impacted with this new plan, or is less?
Can you go back to the PowerPoint?
Same.
I got to go back to the PowerPoint, 1 sec.
No worries. Thank you.
So, the previous plan, I don't have the exact figure for you, but the previous plan preserved this area, which was a total of 35% of the space was preserved. And then the revised plan, you can see, especially where the cul-de-sac is, this location, it cuts significantly more into the proposed wetland area than what the previous plan showed. And this is about like 17% or so of the site. So we're about half the amount of open space than what was previously submitted for approval.
Mr. Buechner.
This is normally when I'd ask Julie, but since Julie's not here, are we supposed to, obviously we need to go forward with what's being presented to us. Is the cluster dead and gone? And we should move forward with a new potential and try to do this as a planning commission individuals, am I right?
Yeah, the cluster development was rejected, so we're starting over with a new plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Just for helping Ms. Malala-Holly, if you go on your packet, page 31 of the electronic packet, you can see the overlay of the wetlands over the houses. So that said, it looks like house number 8 is in the wetlands, about half a 9, a little sliver of 22, a little sliver of 10, and a little bit of that cul-de-sac. So it shows you very easily the overlay if you wanted to look at that and compare.
Thank you.
Sure. Any more questions for Mr. Carlisle or Mr. Savinant? I just have one brief one, and I know it's in our written packet, but this will be the same situation as far as the regional detention plan, that this will be covered by that. So any kind of potential flooding could be dealt with by that regional plan?
Yeah, I mean, regardless if the detention is on-site or off-site, they still have to do a full engineering to ensure that any water that enters the site leaves the site without spilling onto adjacent properties. So it will be all mitigated through an engineering review, even if the proposed stormwater is off-site.
Okay, great, thank you. More questions for staff? If not, we'll bring up the petitioner to make a presentation and answer any questions the commissioners may have. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commission. Again, I'm Jim Epping. I appreciate you having me back. I'm here tonight with Joe Miniacci of Mondrian Properties, and thank you, Mr. Carlisle, Mr. Savanant, for the review. We had a much smaller, less professional slideshow, but I think I'll rely on Mr. Carlisle's and maybe just answer a couple of your questions. As it relates to the wetlands, similar to the last plan, the cluster plan, that also was impacting the wetlands. In general, there's about 1.13 acres, just over 1.13 acres of wetlands on the site. The previous plan did receive Eagle permit, so we went through following your recommendation, and before we went back to the board, we went to Eagle. Eagle did provide a permit for mitigating those wetlands for the previous plan, so we anticipate having that same permit being granted this time through that same process. Previously, the cluster plan impacted about 0.24 acres of the 1.13, so 0.24. This plan, because the lots have gotten bigger, we're proposing to impact 0.5. So we're impacting about an additional 0.26 acres of the impact. So they're generally the same areas, just those boundaries are a little bit larger than they were in the previous plan. We're still very, very excited, obviously, about the plan and the opportunity to develop homes here. They're going to be beautiful homes. We've provided architecture. We don't have any issue with modifying that driveway on Lot 6. In terms of the pathway, previously we had a pathway that was connecting through the backs of the lots. We still think the connection to the trail system is important, and so we've worked with the planning department, and we're going to have that 10-foot wide path essentially along the sidewalk area. So it'll be a larger sidewalk, but still meeting your safety path standards. So we're reducing, based on feedback from the City Council, we're reducing the overall lots by 4, going from 26 to 22. We are still planning on, and frankly have to, go through the Eagle process. If the Eagle, at the end of the day, it's kind of a collaborative design process between the city, the planning department, Eagle, and then, of course, us as applicants. And so if Eagle does come back with modifications or anything like that, we'll certainly deal with those. We don't expect it again because we did receive that permit on the last one, and we expect this to be similar. But that is part of the process that it will apply to Eagle. We already have. The neighbors have been noticed that application is in. Those results will go to the city as well as to us, and if there's any changes, we'll either deal with those through the planning department or potentially have to come back here. But I guess from the city's point of view and from the neighbor's point of view, Eagle, that's their job, and it really isn't between us and Eagle, it's between us, Eagle, and the city, and so the city stays very much involved with that. All right. With that, we're here to answer any other questions. We appreciate the opportunity to come back.
Mr. Krent.
Since I didn't see any elevations of the back of the homes or the sides, what materials are being used?
Those should be in your electronic packet. Okay. Those were submitted and I believe are in there now for all 4 sides. There's masonry and then
I see.
siding on it as well.
All right, I see it now. Okay.
It's at the end.
Yep, I see it now.
Yeah, that wasn't in the original submission, but we had the opportunity to add that in.
Mr. Faison.
I noticed you don't have branch homes as an option in this plan, so I wonder if you could just speak to that, because they were an option in your previous plan.
They were, and obviously we're building ranch homes throughout the city of Troy, and they're doing really, really well. I think I mentioned at some of our previous presentations, like I guess all life, it does boil down to a certain amount of economics. In the previous plan, the lots were 60-foot wide. I've gone through this math in a lot of cities, so stop me or forgive me, but generally speaking, every foot of road costs about $2,000 when you put in the curb and the gutter and the asphalt and the utilities. And generally speaking, you split that between a home on either side of the street. So every foot of a lot costs about $1,000 per lot. Our lots have gone from 60-foot wide to 77-foot wide because of meeting the R1C. So we've added 17 linear foot to each lot. What that means in round numbers is we've added about $17,000 just to the lot cost. And so what we find is that, at the end of the day, when a buyer looks at a Mondrian home versus a home on the other side of town, and appraisers look at it, it's a square footage thing, and they say, hey, that 1,700 square foot home costs $350,000, and this one costs $367. Why does it cost different? It doesn't make sense. And so what we find is as the lots become larger, the economics really dictate the size of the home. And so the homes are still going to be, first-class City of Troy homes, but they are now that larger lot and the larger home on the larger lot.
Okay,
The bottom line, I'm sorry to interrupt, is just that the homes, a ranch home on this lot would be too expensive and probably wouldn't sell.
I thought that was what you were going to say, and it sounds like you're also saying that the cluster ordinance permits you to build on a smaller lot, which makes the ranch a more feasible option in that kind of project.
Exactly, and your master plan really speaks to that. In some locations in the city, it works well. The council didn't feel like this was an area for that for whatever reason, but we're having great success with those smaller lots and those smaller homes in other areas.
Thank you.
Ms. Parakis?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the nature of the permit, which you already obtained for the cluster, in terms of, are you able to tell us what they required of you? In terms of, did they give you credits? Did you have to create wetlands somewhere else? Did you fill them in? What was your requirement?
So we were granted a permit to mitigate 0.24 acres, and Eagle seems to be shifting to their preference. They sometimes formally used to like you to do it on site. In some cases, they still do. Other times, they would ask you to build a bank, wetland bank, in a different location, which required monitoring and 3 years of validation, everything. Really what I'm seeing, they've shifted to, we'd like you to buy a credit. And so what Eagle has done, or certified companies within the state have built wetland banks in different areas throughout our regions. And now Eagle tends to, at least projects we've been recently involved with over the last 5 years, they really would rather us buy credits at a certified wetland bank that's professionally managed, professionally monitored, healthy, and it really will be there forever. And so in that case, we were going to buy 0.24, there's a multiplier factor, but buy wetland credits at a Eagle bank, and we'll anticipate doing that same thing this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mulally.
I have two questions to ask you. The first question is coming to you from one of the emails that we received, where the neighbor is pretty concerned about the silver oak that is 270 years old. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yeah.
And I just want a confirmation that that is going to be preserved. Is that part of your plan?
Absolutely, yeah. Mr. Carlisle pointed to that area. That's the general direction. It's off to the side. It's really in a safe area. It really, because it's in the wetlands, the undisturbed parts of the wetlands, it really won't have any impact at all. We'll make sure that we put the tree protection fencing around it in that whole area, but it will not be impacted by any earth moving or anything else like that.
May I also ask you if you have considered putting up a small sign in front of the tree also to kind of have the neighbors recognize the value behind this tree in terms of its heritage and its age?
It's not a bad idea, and I'm sure it's something that we would consider. It's not easily accessible. I think probably the neighbors to the south have a better view of it than maybe our neighbors will, other than the fact that it's a big, giant, beautiful tree. But it's not a bad idea, and certainly something we would consider and work with to do
That's your
that.
green credit value for this project, I guess.
There you go.
Right. Okay. My second question is, yes, I noticed that you have reduced the number of houses from what it was in the prior plan, but I still feel that some of the things in the design standards could have been addressed. So I want to know your thoughts on that, especially what I'm looking at is in terms of what we have in our packet, page 21, the design standards 2F, which talks about community amenities, things like common patios, seating areas, water features. Nothing of those kinds are there. I do see that there's a cul-de-sac, yes, a safe way for kids to ride their bike and walk also. But other than the path that you're providing for the trail, no other amenities are being proposed, correct?
Well, correct. The preservation of the wetlands, which we'd have to do anyways, we're also preserving some open space around those, which we think is an amenity for the whole larger neighborhood. The 10-foot safety path is not an inexpensive path, given the perimeter of the site, the length of the site. But because we're following the conventional zoning, and if I read the ordinance correctly, I may be incorrect, but if I read the ordinance correctly, those standards really look across many different zoning districts, and whether we're doing clusters and things like that, if I'm interpreting that right, some of those standards, those greater number of amenities are generally for like PUDs or cluster zoning. In this R1C zoning district, we've met the zoning standards, we've met the sizes, we've met all the setbacks. In the previous cluster plan did have some more of those amenities, but this one, we're really kind of asked by the ordinance to privatize the land. You know, the land, like in the neighborhood just immediately adjacent, it's kind of lot line uses up the area. The R1C on its own doesn't specifically dictate to use community open space. It really is designed to be kind of independent lots.
Yes, I agree with that part. However, considering the fact that we are looking at 22 homes, some kind of amenity provided by this development will definitely be an added positive thing for the families, especially with young families who will move into these locations closer to the schools, of course.
Yeah.
So.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. We do try and add the appropriate level of amenities throughout all of our neighborhoods. Because of the ability to still have 17% open space, some of that is wetlands, some of that is just green area around that area and around the frontage, and then to have that path. I don't have the exact linear footage, but it's about 1,000 feet of 10-foot wide safety path, which again has a pretty significant cost, and we think that that's an amenity not only for these neighbors, but it really connects all the way from the dog park and then going north. So I think that's a great amenity.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carlisle or Savin, did you want to address also the issue about the amenities in that site plan review standards?
Sure. Ms. Mahaly, it was it was a great question, and one that we look at, consider. It's a requirement of the site plan review standards. Now, again, I want to note these site plan review standards apply for any project that goes through site plan review, not just single family cluster, non-single family cluster, or commercial. Some of them are more appropriate or apropos based on the type of development. And so if you actually look at some of those requirements, it talks about community amenity that add value to the development, such as patio, seating areas, water features, artwork, sculpture, clock towers, pedestrian plazas with park benches, or other features accessible to the public. That particular clause may be more appropriate for a commercial development or something of a multifamily where you have more of a common open space that attracts more public in the general, other than just the residents that live there. But to the point that Mr. Epic made, he is not required, but they have agreed to put that 10-foot path in. And so they're working with DPW to do that. So we do find that to be a significant benefit to this project, because if that were not put in, there would be a pretty large gap between the path to south to where they're going to connect up to the DPW yard. So we looked at that as meeting the requirement of that community amenity through this project.
Thank you.
Mr. Fox?
Is the plan currently to put EV charging stations in the homes once they're constructed in the garages?
No.
Is that something that you would be amenable to? Or?
Well, I'll have to check with Joe, but I certainly think as a potential, my mind just went blank in terms of, but you know, a feature that a homeowner could elect through their construction process. Certainly, I think that would be possible, but because these are all for sale homes that ideally will have, in most cases, homeowners involved right from the purchase of the home and through the construction, that could certainly be an amenity that could be added on, but it's not something that would just be standard installed.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Epping, please use the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That way. That's okay. Hi. Any more questions for Mr. Epping? Yes, Mr. Tagle.
I was just curious if you could maybe share with us, your previous plan, there was a footprint area for the homes that would go on the 26 lots. And I'm curious, do you know how that compares to the footprint now that you would have on the current configuration? I guess what I'm getting at, there was a density question before, but the homes were smaller. So I'm wondering at the end of the day, how close are really the two plants, excuse me, for footprint area on the ground?
It's an excellent question. I apologize. I don't have that data, but I bet if I ask Mr. Carlisle, he has those charts that could compare the site. So the lots we know have become 17 foot wider. I honestly don't have the plans in front of me to be able to compare the side setbacks before and after, or before and currently. Ben, do you have that information available? Or if not, we can certainly get it for you. Maybe Joe, do you? Sorry, Deb.
Give me a second. One second.
We're making Mr. Carlisle use his math skills here. We're in trouble.
That's why I stopped at calculus.
How much bigger did the houses get? 25% bigger?
The previous homes were ranging from 1,900 square feet up to about 2,300 or 2,400 square feet. These homes now are going to be 3,200 square feet up to about 3,600 square feet.
Seems like there's more building here mathematically. So
There's
a little bit.
certainly bigger homes.
but mathematically less numbers of homes, bigger homes.
Correct.
But mathematically it's a little percentage more, but I don't know if you've got it.
Yeah, I don't have the math in front of me, but I can tell you that the setbacks for these homes are 10 feet bigger front yard setback, a 5 foot larger rear yard setback, but a 5 foot less side yard setback. So the cluster homes are closer together, but they're much smaller foundational footprints than what's being shown in front of you.
I guess the point to my question was that although we have less lots, we have more density as far as the amount of home we're building.
The amount of square foot for the first floor footprint is, yes, there's more. I would agree. There's more first floor footprint on this proposed, the new plan, than there was on the cluster plan.
Any more questions for Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Krent.
So just following through on the footprint of the house, is the open space less on this plan than the prior cluster plan?
Yes. So Mr. Tango, I think of density as of number of dwelling units. So I think phrasing it, the footprints are certainly bigger, and if we added up all the footprints, they probably would be larger in mass than the 26 unit with the smaller home. So I agree with you. In terms of open space, yes, the cluster plan has a requirement for open space, and we provided 35% total open space. The R1C doesn't have any requirement for open space, but because we are dealing with wetlands and we do have some open space around those, we're providing 17%. So it's about half as much community open space or common area open space.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Epping? I just have one quick one. You're in agreement with Mr. Carlisle that to flip the driveway on lot number 6 to allow that bike pathway or pedestrian pathway to go through there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Want to make sure of that and make sure we have that correct. So, there's no more questions for you. You can have a seat, and we will open it up. This is not a public hearing, but an opportunity for the public to comment on the proposal. The time is 3 minutes per person. I think Mr. Savin has the duty of keeping track of the time. We don't have anything fancy like city council does with a red light or anything like that, but.
We do, it's right
Oh,
there.
does it work?
Oh.
It probably doesn't work, does it? So,
Well, I've got the timer, and if it doesn't beep after 3 minutes, I will
okay,
let you know.
you'll throw something at me. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So anyone from the public that would like to address the planning commission can come forward at this time. And be sure to sign in on the sheet there for our recording secretary so she has a record of it. Good evening, Mr. Kappas.
Good evening, Mr. Lampert. My name is Anthony Kappas. I live at 501 Eckerd. Basically right across from lots 1, 2, and 3 on this particular drawing. From what I understand, and if somebody could verify this, I'd appreciate it. This is actually the by right plan. So this falls within the guidelines of everything that the city is requiring for regular. There's no variances, no nothing on this. Is that a correct statement? Can somebody verify that?
We'll answer that after the public comment period is over, so we'll let you know.
Okay, sort of affects my comments, but that's okay. I appreciate some of the questions that were asked. The tree, the pathway, those type of things are very concerning. What concerns me, however, the applicant had 2 houses torn down, and it literally decimated our street for almost a month. The time that they took to tear them down, the time that they took to cart away all of the rubbish, and the fact that by the time they got done, our street had so many ruts in it, you could barely pass it. I want to know what the city and the planning department is going to do to ensure that my rights as a citizen of Troy are not taken away from me being able to use my street, being able to, I'm a retired man, first time I've said it, and even though it's been 4 years, but I'm a retired man. Last thing I want to do is hear this gentleman's beeping and all of his construction equipment at 7 o'clock in the morning for 3 years. This project is a 30-month-long project. So for 3 years, you're literally going to take away my rights to a peaceful, quiet area so that you can allow this man to do what he wants to do. Personally, I think that's wrong. What I'd like to see is that since he has a street going down his subdivision, that all of his trucks, all of his vehicles are required whenever possible to use that street. That way, it doesn't affect our road, it keeps the peace a little bit more, and it makes life at least bearable for the citizens that have been there for years and years and years. Other than that, I don't know what else I could, is this going to affect the value of my house? Absolutely not. If he's putting in 3,200 square foot houses, they have to be someplace in the $800,000 to $1 million range. That's not my concern. My concern is the next 3 years. How am I going to live and enjoy my property while I have to listen to all of this? While I have to deal with his construction? While I have to deal with his vehicles destroying my road? It's not going to happen. I would like and ask for some assurances that the city can do something. Other than that, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Next person that would like to speak to us? Good evening.
Good evening. Greg Schaff, 613 Thurber. Just a couple comments or responses to Mr. Carlisle. The cul-de-sac, as pointed out earlier, is actually further south, and it does affect a lot more of the wetlands there. So I want that clarified. My concern at 613 Thurber, where they're taking the wetlands from, that is all going to congregate behind my house. I'm concerned about the standing water there. I hear a lot of, well, it should be mitigated. I want to hear it will be, it shall be. Should and shall are two different things. So it's speculation at this point. So my concern is that that gets taken care of and addressed properly. I do appreciate the concerns about that tree back there. It is majestic and it is beautiful. My concern is with trying to mitigate that area. What are you doing to the root structure of that? You know, what damage is going to occur because of that? So there's a lot of things to consider about this property. I can tell you that the previous development that people have been referencing, the biggest complaint everybody had was lot 26 on the old one that was facing Tallman. Everybody said that if that was gone, there would be no issues with it. But they got ignored, so here's what we're left to deal with. I understand that they meet the building codes, and that's the requirements of it, but as a current homeowner, I don't want to be affected by this in a negative fashion, nor do I want to see the city lose some landmarks in there. So thank you for your time, and thank you for responding to my email.
Thank you. Next person that would like to speak to the commission can come up forward and sign in, and we won't start timing you until you start speaking. So if you want to sign in first, that's up to you.
Thanks. Sounds like a plan. And Russell Crawshaw, I'm on 627 Thurber. Thank you for all your very insightful comments. I did the overlay of all that packet. If you look at lot 9 and lot 22 in the cul-de-sac, that is not accurately represented in that picture. That is wetland. I'm directly behind that majestic tree. It's also very wet there all the time. Similar concerns. They're going to kill those trees by digging. Also, that cul-de-sac is going to be people going around, and I'm going to hear it, much like the noise. Other than that, this plan meets code. Everybody has to make a profit. There's vacant land. I agree with it. You've got to do the development. But I just want to make sure my thoughts were heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, we will then bring it back to the commission for either questions or resolution. Well, Mr. Carl, I don't know if you're going to respond to some of the questions that were brought up.
I just want to answer, Mr. Kappas asked the question of, does this require any variances? And I just want to confirm, it does not require any variances other than obtaining an EGLE permit for a wetland. It's not a variance, but it is another permit that has to be obtained prior to getting final approval from the city. Okay. But there are no variances from the actual zoning ordinance itself.
Okay. And I guess the next question would be going to Mr. Sevenant Road. That's a dirt road in front of part of the project here. What are the city stands as far as construction traffic on a dirt road, and what kind of ruts it might make?
So I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm not going to pretend I am one here. The concerns of Mr. Kappas are I get it. I would have the same concerns as Mr. Kappas. So if this project is approved this evening, the next step would be to submit detailed engineering drawings to the engineering department. I'm going to double dip here and address a couple of concerns. So Mr. Epping, although he does a really nice job presenting overall developments, he's a professional landscape architect. He's listening to the concern about the tree. The way that you protect trees is you protect the drip line of the tree. He's listening to the residents. He knows that tree is important. So, I'm confident that he's going to take steps, and his civil engineer are going to take steps to protect that tree. there's an email that Mr. Schaff sent that was shared with everybody. We've had a lot of back and forth for the last week or so. Mr. Schaff was the gentleman who I informed of the notice provided by Eagle, and so he's aware, and the other residents are aware, so now they can become involved if they want to. So getting back to engineering, Eckford will be, the portion of Eckford in front of this development will be paved eventually, and this developer and the developer across the street will pay for that paving. But they're not going to pave it immediately and then beat the heck out of it through construction. They're going to wait until everything's complete so that the road has a longer life expectancy. So in the meantime, when the plans are submitted to engineering, they're going to make a determination of where construction traffic is going to come from. It may be that they don't allow it on Eckford for the reasons Mr. Kappa stated. I don't know. That's going to be a determination. They'll consider that. The construction will be inspected by the city throughout the construction. Mr. Mondra, this is not his first rodeo. Mr. Maniaci's been doing this for a long time. They'll have to maintain the site. They'll have to, if they do come off of Tallman, for example, those trucks bring mud off the site. They'll have to sweep the streets so they're clean at night so that the mud isn't tracked all over the city. So in terms of Mr. Kappa's stated 30-month build, I don't know. Only time will tell what that is. Mr. Mondrian, I don't want to speak for him, but he's going to want to do this as quickly as he can, because the quicker he completes it, the quicker the money's in the bank. So it's in his best interest to do this quickly. But while construction's ongoing, we have an ordinance that regulates when construction can occur. They can't start until 7 in the morning. They have to end by 8 o'clock at night, Monday through Saturday. They can't do construction on Sunday. Those rules are enforced. Regarding drainage, there's a requirement that development cannot negatively impact the neighbors, so it can't negatively impact the way that water flows. We're hearing neighbors say that there's a problem now, so there's the opportunity. Again, Mr. Epping's here. Their engineer will, I'm sure, watch this meeting. They're aware of the concerns. If there's an opportunity to design this site to take care of problems that exist today, and they can do that, they'll do it. If I was gonna have a developer build next to me, I would hope it would be Mondrian. They do a nice job, but change is hard. I totally understand the concerns of the neighbors.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission, or somebody want to float a resolution? Mr. Fox?
I guess, may I address a question to the applicant?
Sure.
I was curious, was any thought internally put towards redrafting a cluster as opposed to just pursuing a by right build as this one is? Like a cluster with, say, 25 instead of 26 parcels?
No, because the city council, I think, was thoughtful, and they certainly had a conversation and debated about it. And it really, from my perspective, wasn't about a number or anything. If we walked away saying, boy, if we just did ABC, I think we got this, we probably would. But there were, a lot of different discussions going on, and it became clear to us that the city, we received the message, through that meeting that it made sense to follow the ordinance.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Malaholly?
Mr. Chairman, I think we owe an answer to the first speaker. He had asked us whether this particular proposal is built according to ordinance. I think
Mr. Carlisle already answered that. So.
Okay. This is not a question for the applicant.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for the applicant before we let him sit back down again?
I will just address, because there's this idea of standing water in the corner, and we agree. It is a wetland, and some of the neighbors brought up really good points. We're going to mitigate according to Eagle standards, according to any permit that they may issue, but the majority of that will still remain a wetland. And frankly, we want it to remain a wetland, right? We want it to be a healthy wetland, and so it will continue to be wet. Now, to Mr. Savanen's point, if there are opportunities through our engineering to ensure that it doesn't, flood the area or whatever a couple times a year, absolutely, we'll do proper engineering. But we don't want to negatively impact that wetland, and sometimes that means by drying it out. And so it will continue to be a functioning wetland.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Mulholland, you had more comments?
I'm going to try and phrase my question as diplomatically as possible. I would like to know, because City Council unanimously said no to the cluster proposal, if Ms. Parakis, if I can single her out, if not, it's fine, anybody can take up this question and kind of just summarize what the reasons were, aside from that one house that was sitting, since I was not able to attend the City Council meeting.
Ms. Parakis, you comfortable answering the question?
I mean, I did watch back to what City Council said just yesterday, so it's pretty fresh, and I did take some notes. I mean, in general, I'm not going to point anyone out in particular, but in general, I'm going to start out by saying I'm personally disappointed in the outcome because when I did a side-by-side of the cluster versus the by right, I think that the cluster development had many more safeguards in for the residents. It's true that it was 26 homes versus 22, but we went from 9 driveways on Eckford just down to 8. We still have the same road entrance on Tallman, and we only eliminated 1 driveway. We don't have that bike trail that ran through the neighborhood, and we lost that southern buffer. And the ranch, I'm going to answer your question. The ranch, the first cluster development offered the ranches, which was the missing middle in my opinion, because the houses were not just ranch options, but they were also smaller. They were the 1,900 to the 24 versus the 3,200 square feet. And we went from a protected 2.7 acres or 35% to 17%, and that's not even protected. That's just, that's wetland, but, and then I did look, Mr. Carlisle, I looked and I saw that the setbacks, because one of the council members mentioned that they felt that the homes were going to be so close to the road compared to up the road. The cluster was a 25-foot setback, and now it's a 30-foot setback, so it's a 5-foot difference. So that was one of the complaints. This development was going to completely transform Eckford, which, we knew it was going to transform Eckford. We all struggled here. We sat and had the same discussions and the same struggles, but we came down on the other side of it because we knew that this was coming. It's fine. I'm not trying to say I don't like what you did. You did what you did because that was your option, and I understand that. I thought the cluster was better. Some other comments were, wanting to protect the wetlands, but the wetlands will be protected per Eagle, like they will be. It's debatable about, I think in this, the by right, what's presented to us today, lots 8 and 9 look pretty questionable to me, but apparently you're going to get the permits. Before it was a couple of other lots that were questionable, but it looks like they got the permit. So the wetlands were going to be protected one way or the other, or mitigated. And it seemed like a lot of they were very torn, and they were going back and forth, and they just came out on the other side of it. And it's disappointing for me. I would have liked to have seen the cluster because I do feel that it matched the northern cluster better than this one, and I just think there was more open space and it filled the missing middle. But that was generally the consensus from City Council. They were torn, but they fell on the other side of.
Thank you, I appreciate it very much.
Just to add on to that, the other comment, I think, from watching the City Council, I didn't watch it as recently as Ms. Parakis, but when it was first on, I think the concern by council members was also that the regulated wetland that Eagle regulates would be included within that open space, and some of the council members thought that wasn't exactly fair, but as Mr. Savant will say, well, that's the way it's always been. So yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
We talked about that when we crafted the ordinance, whether it should be included or not, and we decided to allow that to be included in the calculation.
thank you. Yes, Mr. Beekner.
Can I ask a question of Brent and Ben? And I understand getting rid of water out of the property. So on all the north side, the west side, the south side, you can dig on the perimeter of that property line. On the east side and where the wetland is, how do you, so you can trench all the way around on the other three sides? You can't trench there or you're gonna mess with all the woods. So how do you maintain that 1 1/4 side buffer? You can't trench it out to keep the water contained in that. Do you know how they do that? I know you guys aren't.
So I'm not, again,
I'm not either.
not an engineer, but so they're going to have if this moves forward, if it's to move forward as presented this evening, they're going to have to get approval from Eagle, and they're going to have to engineer the design of the site in such a way that they preserve the wetlands as instructed to by Eagle. That's what the engineer is going to have to do. Mr. Epic is correct. When I talked about eliminating issues with existing standing water, I was not inferring that the intention was to dry out a fully functioning wetland. I think Mr. Epic was very eloquent in his explanation. What the filling and the earth moving they're allowed to do, if they can do so in such a way while still preserving the wetland, but they're obligated to do so in such a way that they're not to impact the neighbors. But if they can also, while they're doing that, clear up any issues, it's an opportunity to do so. But the Eagle permit is going to kind of dictate what they can and can't do and how they design the site.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Fox?
Yeah, I guess I want to take a second to echo the disappointment that the original cluster plan was not approved. For a lot of the same reasons. I think another thing that's worth pointing out is, as we kind of roughballed it earlier, there's now a larger building footprint overall. I mean, density has gone up, protected wetlands have gone down. The path that would have very nicely snaked through the neighborhood and the residents would have been able to more easily access it has now been pulled out of the neighborhood and now skates around the edge. It's almost a shame having seen that development and then looking at this one, because if I had seen them maybe in reverse order, I wouldn't necessarily look at this one as poorly as I do. Not that it's a bad plan, it's just in comparison to the previous cluster, it is a disappointment to see it now. So I just wanted to voice that, because I know, I guess kind of addressing the elephant in the room, I mean, this process, the applicant does not have to go in front of city council again. It just goes through us. So I think it is unfortunate the way that this all played out. So.
Any other comments, questions, or would someone like to float a resolution?
I'll do a resolution.
Correct.
Resolved that preliminary site condominium approval pursuant to Article 8 and Section 10.02 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed estates of Eckford site condominium 22 units/lots south side of Eckford, west of Rochester, parcels 88-20-15-252-028, and then 002, 036, 037, 004, and 005. Section 15, approximately 7.56 acres in size, currently zoned R1C, one family residential district, be granted subject to the following conditions. Applicant is to obtain the Eagle wetland permit prior to final engineering approval, and have the applicant flip the driveway on lot 6 so it is less in conflict with the proposed pedestrian crossing on Eckford.
Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Faison seconds it. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, guess we're ready for the vote.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly,
Yes.
Ms. Parekis,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Buechner,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Motion's adopted, and now we're on to public comment for items on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission for items that are on the agenda? Seeing none, then we will move on to planning commission comment. I'll start with Mr. Carlisle.
No comment.
Mr. Savant, you had something you had to bring up about our next meeting?
Yeah, I'll do the other thing first. I sent an email out last week asking members who's interested in attending the Michigan Association of Planning Annual Conference at Grand Traverse Resort, October 4th through the 6th. I've got 3 responses in the affirmative, members Krent, Lambert, and Fox. Does anyone want to throw their name into the ring? Mr. Hudson.
I think I was one of the first, but you said we haven't got an agenda yet.
Right.
So I was iffy on it.
Yeah, you're an iffy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll write you down Hudson and in parentheses iffy.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. And our next meeting is in 2 weeks, July 25th. At this time, we don't have any items that are going to be ready for consideration to take action on. So we can make a decision tonight not to have a meeting on the 25th. We can wait, and then I can send an email after I confirm with Mr. Lambert. I'm just being
I don't
forthright.
think anyone here has a pressing need to meet 2 weeks from tonight. So I guess we can consider that to be an unofficial. Do you need a resolution or not? Or Mr. Motzny will make you work tonight?
If you're going to cancel the meeting, you should have a resolution.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to cancel the next meeting in July?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Buechner, is there a second? Ms. Parakis seconds it. Any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the roll call to cancel that meeting.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly,
Yes.
Ms. Parekis.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Buechner,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Savana? Okay. Mr. Motzny, welcome back to the Planning Commission. We see you once in a while when Ms. Dufresne's on vacation, but anything you wanted to share with the commission?
No, it was nice being here, and thank you.
Okay. Mr. Tagle, Mr. Krent,
Nothing.
Ms. Parakis, Mr. Faison,
Nothing for me.
Mr.
Nothing.
Hudson, Ms. Malala-Holly, Mr. Buechner, Mr. Fox. Yeah, nothing from you. The only thing I wanted to mention too, because not directly related to what the action we just took, but if members of City Council are concerned that maybe under the cluster development, that including regulated wetlands within that open space requirement is not exactly a good idea, is that something we want to look at, maybe trying to make it more generous and go beyond including those regulated wetlands, or does that open up a Pandora's box?
Let me think about it.
Okay, all right.
I mean, it's we can craft the language any way that the city wants us to craft the language.
Well, maybe I guess we should hear if City Council is serious about their concerns on that before we even broach the subject. So,
I'll say this, we prior to us developing this specific option, we had an open space preservation option in the ordinance. We still have it, but we only had one applicant that pursued it. It was really kind of cumbersome. And we really wanted to incentivize the development of these types of one-family residential developments. Are they all perfect? No. You know, there's some that are better than others, but I think it's from the standpoint of encouraging this type of development. I mean, we've got over a dozen of them approved, so it does seem like it's an attractive option as written now. So I guess I would caution everyone. We don't want to tighten the reins too much because we don't want to be back in the situation we were where developers weren't interested anymore.
all right. Great. Any other comments?
Just to follow up on that, Brent, I know we had a discussion at one point about the definition of open space, right? So it's broader than just the protected wetlands, like what was a path open space, or did they have to have amenities for it to be open space and recreational things in it? But did we go down the path of analyzing, should we make a change to our open space definition for that?
If memory serves, that discussion wasn't for a one-family cluster development, but no, we did not go down that path. Good pun, by the way.
But for the same reason, I
Right.
assume, for flexibility.
Right.
Any other comments? If not, we are adjourned.